Viking warfare expert rates 11 Viking battles in movies. I hope the movies don't get the... I'm gonna have to skip ahead when they show the movie if it's too long. I'll have to be a little careful. Look at the beard. It's Dumbledore with an axe. Have you ever seen Dumbledore with an axe? Welcome to the Metatron channel. I find the best stuff just for you. Alright, we're already starting with good copyright material right there. How about we skip it? Yeah, let's go.
The modern idea that Vikings threw their axe is a misconception. If you look at the physics of an axe, they're very poorly suited for throwing in combat. I'm Dr. William Short. I'm an independent scholar focusing on scientific research of Vikings, particularly Viking combat. Today we're going to look at Viking battles in movies and TV and judge how real they are. What he does is he catches a spear that was thrown at him, turns it around and throws it right back. And that is mentioned numerous times in the literary sources as being a very effective battle technique. And we've tested it and it works great. It's really not so difficult to catch the spear in flight and throw it back.
Of course he has tested it. Where are the ditches though? Alright.
The nature of berserkers are still a little bit mysterious, but they are people who enter a battle frenzy before a battle, and the sources say they howl like wolves, they bite their shields, and iron and fire cannot harm them.
What he said about berserkers, I have a dedicated video, of course he's right. Did you notice that he said they howl like wolves? And that's because usually when we think of berserkers, we think of bear skin, which is correct. And by the way, it could be a linguistic joke, because in Old Norse, as well as in English, bear can mean the animal, or bear in the sense that you're not wearing anything. So bear skin could mean that they're wearing the skin of a bear, or bear skin in the sense that you're not wearing anything. So, and it could have been a joke in period. That's my interpretation. I think it was like a double entendre in period as well. Double meaning. That's what I think. But then there is also the connection with the warriors, with the wolves. These exist in ancient Rome as well. Depending on how you interpret the sources, either they are the same thing, or they're two separate types of warriors, and it's difficult to know.
A typical enclosure would be a wood palisade fence. And climbing it with an axe seems very doable, using the axe to pull yourself up. And we've done a lot of research on the physics of these weapons, doing motion capture, measuring historic weapons, using computer models to study it. And what the axe has over some of the other weapons is just this insane amount of power. In one of our measurements, at the moment the two-handed axe hits the target, it just destroys what it touches. And that's how Vikings used it. The village is a sax, and before he enters, you can see that it's slung horizontally from his belt. A sax was a short sword. What the sax is a chopping weapon, and he's holding it upside down in a strange way and uses it for a slice, and that's not what the weapon is meant for at all.
Yeah, some people consider the sax more like a. Some people say it's a big knife. Some people say it's a short sword. Regardless of the nomenclature, in fact, I'm interested how you would consider a sax. Let's be honest about it. He's nice, so he didn't say it, but let's be honest about it. They just wanted it to look cool. It's reverse grip. It's what was popularized through ninja movies, and now everybody, the Witcher does it, the samurai do it. Sometimes I see medieval knights doing it. It's like, it's silly. It's the reverse grip. The only times in which I can see the reverse grip of the ice pick grip work is that if you have a very stubby weapon and you're trying to stab through something hard, sure, great, because you get good precision, a lot of power through a reverse grip. But to hold it this way and do your try to block doing this is ridiculous.
And destroying things with fire was just a way to emphasize the terror of these kinds of raids. We've done some tests where we actually built Viking houses, instrumented them, burned them down. It's only a matter of a few minutes before everyone inside is dead.
Man, this guy, everything. Now, in a minute, they're going to be like, look, they destroyed an entire village. Oh, yeah, we tested that. We destroyed. We completely raided an entire village. Yeah, women, children, animals. We just did everything for science. These guys has done everything. Like in a minute, they'll be like trying to worship Odin, and it'll be like, oh yeah, we summoned Odin through a ritual, and it worked. So I can tell you that Odin appeared. There was a crow and all that. It was great. This guy's done everything for science. Like honestly, he built a Viking historically accurate, we should say Norse, historically accurate house, only to burn it down to the ground. Man, this guy's like the forefront of experiential archaeology. Now they're gonna show the Drakar or Drekar. They're gonna show the boats, and he'll tell you, "Oh yeah, I've just sailed through Iceland, all around Iceland, and then went back to the other Nordic country on one of those. I did that totally because we need to try.
The game, Knotlaker, a little bit off. We play it almost every year. Our research suggests that it's something quite different than what you see on the screen. So in the clip we see 5 versus 5, but in Viking times it's pretty clear that it was 1-on-1. People were carefully matched to be about the same strength. You see a lot of running in this clip. The sources suggest running was not a part of the game at all. The game was really about power. It wasn't about speed. In the sources, when people talk about the games, they don't say that this team won or this team won. It's always this particular individual was stronger than his opponent. This one was stronger than this one. I give the creative team that made this film a lot of credit for doing deep research and really getting things right about Viking culture and Viking society.
You know, he's nice. He's too nice to say it, but the reality is they should have hired him. And I can already say that, and I've only been watching him for what? 5 minutes? This guy's good.
Deep research and really getting things right about Viking culture and Viking society. I would rate this as a 9. There are some things a little off, but there are so many things that are just perfect that I can't give it any less.
I think he's not gonna go below 8. So that's the only thing. I think we need him to do the explanation because he's nice, he's got the beard, he's knowledgeable, he's such a nice guy. And then you need me to give the actual number because then I'm gonna go like it will be like good cop, bad cop. So the guy is gonna be like, oh, I really appreciate your effort, son, for having done that. Thank you for doing the research and opening 3 pages. I really appreciate that. And then on the other side there will be me, nonsense. That's nonsense. That's how it's gonna go.
This kind of sneaking up on the castle, probably not. Vikings were pretty direct about what they did. Now, they did use ambushes quite a bit. That was a very standard battle technique, but it was very different. What you do is get intelligence about where your enemy was going to be and when, and you'd go there and wait for them with a superior force. It's not like you jump out of the bushes or sneak up on them. You just wait, and when they arrive, you start fighting.
This is one thing with the shields, guys. What's wrong with these shields? Let's see if let's do a little game. What's wrong with these shields? What do you think? First and foremost, exposed planks. So you can actually see the wood, which you're not supposed to, because as far as we know, all remnants, not only of Viking shields, Norse shields, but also shields in other cultures show that shields were always covered. When it comes to that cover, it depends. It can be leather, but usually fabric. It could be linen. And then you paint on top of that, rather than having just the wood and a couple of brushes of paint. And that's not only because it really helps. It helps keeping the planks together, the wooden construction. It's kept together more easily when they are inside something. Because imagine, you hit this thing once or twice, and then it splits, and the planks want to go everywhere. But when it's all put together and kept together with a covering, then they will stay together more easily. That's one thing. Now, this cover can be only in the front, leaving the back exposed, or it can be front and back. Both are attested. At that point, it's your own preference. The next thing is the umbo. The center here is correct because Norse shields are center gripped, so they need a hole in the center so that people can grab it. Usually you grab it this way, and so in order to protect your hand, you have the boss, the shield boss. Now, was it made of iron? Yes, depending on the situation, the availability. The only problem with these is that you can clearly see they are machine made. When umbo and bosses are made by hand, there will be a little variability. They will not look exactly. These are all literally photocopied. Like you can see, these are made by a production chain with machine. And if you have a good, it's not the worst I've seen. I've seen worse. So they're not too bad, but still. Also how concave, how convex, that will vary. Then they tend to be too thin. Now shields also in video games, they tend to be too thick. In movie props, they tend to be too thin. And in fact, it's a bit of a, because do remember, it's multiple layers of wood. They're not going to be super thick, but these, to me, appear to be a little too thin. And then one most thing is the rim around. Now, there is evidence of a iron rim. So it did exist, but probably due to the fact that it would be more expensive, every single shield with an iron rim is not believable. What would be more likely is that some people would have had an iron rim, but other people would have had a rawhide rim, which most likely would have been more common. It's just that it's perishable, organic, and so we don't have many, but we do have the remnants of rawhide rims. And some of these rawhide rims sometimes would be strengthened at intervals with little metal, I don't remember the term in English right now, but like little attachments of metal. I can show you all of this because I just so happen to have a historically accurate Viking shield just over there. So give me 2 seconds and I'll pick it up. So this is the back of the shield that you can see here. It's pretty big. Also size would vary, by the way. So you can see this is the part where you grip it, and this can be decorated sometimes, as this one is a little handmade, of course, decorated. And you can see I specifically chose to have this one left uncovered in the back because I wanted to show the pattern of the shield. Then, if we turn it around, as you can see, this one was painted. I painted it this way. I had it painted this way because of Valheim, by the way. That was a reference to Valheim. So you can still see the nails that connect the center of the shield. This is a handmade iron umbo. It was made by hand. And then for the rim, instead of going for iron, we actually went with rawhide. But we do have, at interval, these iron reinforcements here, which are pretty cool. And then, as you can see in the back, the shield can be worn, and we have this accurate leather strap. And so that's the shield. Let me show. And here it is. So that's the shield.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
The shield wall we see in this clip and numerous others really do not depict the shield wall as it was used in the Viking Age. The shield wall, the ancient word is skjaldborg, was mainly meant to protect against projectiles, so that the king could observe and issue his orders, and then it would be taken down and continue the fight.
Project against projectiles.
The shield wall was meant to be a defensive structure thrown up temporarily, then taken down again. So having archers behind the shield wall, probably not so likely. Having archers further back from the front of the lines, definitely. That was very much a thing.
So one thing, he didn't comment on the horrible armor that we saw a second ago, so I've got to do that. What on earth is this? What is it? Haven't I seen something like this on Baldur's Gate as well? No, maybe it wasn't Baldur's Gate, it was something else. Goodness gracious. They gave this guy a conical helmet, although it seems like it doesn't fit him well. But at least it doesn't go below the brow because it's supposed to. It's a bit too high though, that's a lot of space, not to mention the nasal is not working properly, whatever. But this guy's? What on earth is this? It's a monstrosity, it is. What's the point? If I try and stab this guy, even if these provided protection, by the very nature of the geometric shape, I'm going to be pedantic now, if I stab and the business end of my dagger hits here, it will be immediately redirected, just by nature of geometry, to the gaps. So it's like this armor, if anything, corrects your opponent's stabbing. So if you to hit him, let's say this was D&D, and to hit him you need a 14, and then you do an 11, that's fine because you get +5, and so you got 16, and then boom, in the gap. And this is not armored, obviously, this is just probably thin leather. So even if the armoring was this, it's absolutely moronic.
Underwater until the last moment and can be pulled up to stop the ship at the appropriate moment. Now, even in Viking lands, these kinds of underwater obstacles were used, especially around trading towns, and try to minimize the possibility that raiders might attack the trading towns, because trading towns were very desirable targets for raiders. A lot of wealth. So chains, underwater obstacles such as posts and booms that were held below the water's surface, all of these were used. Getting their ships over the mountains and dropping them on the other side so they could sail to Paris. That's not a Viking approach at all. That's way off. They just sailed up the river. Viking ships were the technological marvel of their age
Yep.
that Vikings had and other European lands did not have. And one of the advantages of their ships is they were very shallow draft. They didn't need much water to float the ship. And so sailing up the river to Paris was no problem for them.
Gosh, what on earth is that? Sorry.
For them.
Look at this guy. Ooh, that's a black leather jerkin, if I've ever seen one. Guys, we're back to it. This is like old school Metatron complaining videos. I don't even know how I grew an audience in the first place. It's so obnoxious complaining about everything. Look at this, though. How can I not complain about? Look at the stitches. These are stitches made by the Flintstones.
Especially in the river systems of Eastern Europe, when they sailed on trading voyages from the Baltic Sea down to the Black Sea. It seems likely that the way they would portage a ship over land is with wooden rollers. Just dragging it, probably mostly by human power, maybe with horses. I think I would rate this 4.
Ooh, I was wrong. Well, I would have rated it -3, so there is that. The gap is still significant. This is the face of a man who has seen a leather jerkin and did not comment because he's classy and I'm a monster. I'm a beast.
Vikings TV show uses historical people, names of people, historical places, but a lot of the details seem to transpire in this what-if fantasy world where people with Viking names have been dropped into something that's not very Viking.
Not very Viking of you.
If we believe the myths, that battle would be over in about a half second. Loki was scared to death of Thor because he knew Thor would pulverize him.
Yeah.
So in the instances where Thor issued a challenge, Loki quickly backed off.
For anyone, do remember, Thursday is the day of Thor. That's exactly where that comes from. Whereas Wednesdays is the day of Wedin, which is an older version of the name Woden, which is older, and then Odin. So Wednesday is the day of Odin, Thursday is the day of Thor.
Yeah, so the Warhammer would not have been a thing in the Viking Age, except, of course, for Thor's Mjolnir, his special hammer.
Yeah.
Numerous mentions of him smashing the skulls of his enemies with it.
Probably they can, because of course hammer is a smithing tool. So it probably made them think, like, imagine if you can smack someone with this hammer, and then that was connected to Thor. Of course, it doesn't mean that they did use warhammers that looked like that. Of course not, but it's still interesting. Still interesting.
Numerous mentions of him throwing it. It had additional magical properties. It could bring the dead back to life. Now, in the world of humans, these kind of warhammers don't appear until way after the end of the Viking Age, late medieval and Renaissance, in a response to warriors starting to use plate armor for their defense. So they use these long warhammers to try to smash through the armor.
This guy's on point. Well, smash through the armor, still deliver some of the force, sure, depending. But yeah, no, this guy's good. This guy's good.
I'd give this a 3. The name is right. A few of the aspects are right. But most of it is kind of far off based on what we know of Thor, Loki.
Still, the guy's really nice because he just said, well, at least they got the name right. I mean, Thor.
The axe had a very specific purpose in battle. This is a replica.
Mm-hmm.
And what?
Oh, yeah, it looks like a LARP axe. What's interesting about the axe is we'll listen to him first because we need to give respect to seniority. And then I'll tell you something, what I think about bearded axes.
What's intended to do is to split in two whatever it touches. What the sword has over the axe, the sword has maneuverability. You can change its trajectory as you're targeting. So if one target changes or becomes unavailable as the sword is in motion, you can retarget it and hit something else. With a two-handed axe, you can't do that. Once you set it in motion, it's going to hit. And the analogy we like to use...
I kind of disagree with him a little bit on that, because I think the advantage that the sword has over the axe is the guard, first and foremost, because it's easier to parry with a sword than it is to parry with an axe. So a sword gives you a little more defense. And then, of course, the sword is you can slice with it, you can thrust with it. That's another advantage. You can't really thrust with an axe. But the redirecting No, I think he's mistaken on this one. The way you operate a mace is identical to the way you operate a sword in terms of how you move it around. The difference is that the mace will be the weight distribution. That's something we can talk about. Both the mace and the axe tend to be top heavy, whereas a sword usually, not always, tends to be balanced closer to the hilt.
A sword is like a nuclear tip guided missile. You know that it's going to destroy what it hits, but you can retarget it after it's been launched in flight. But an axe is like an asteroid plunging through the atmosphere, hitting the earth, destroying everything, and killing the dinosaurs.
Wow.
The axe is a cutting weapon, quite simple.
Yep.
And using it in any other way than to cleave in two what's in front of it is probably an ineffective use of.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Good point. Also, I wanted to say one thing I appreciate about bearded axes is that if you think about it, an axe that is used to fight, so a combat axe, a war axe, is thinner because it's supposed to cut through people. Whereas a tool, so an axe that is used as a tool, is thicker in the blade and therefore a little less wieldy because you're supposed to use it to cut through wood. And that's one big difference. I love bearded axes, but when you look at the design, they are relatively thin. And that's something that usually they get wrong in video games because they basically make war axes the same thickness as tool axes that are used for wood chopping.
Of the weapon. And we see that in the clip that a lot of hits with the butt, a lot of strange uses of the axe. I don't think the Viking would typically do that. So in a fight, they would want to apply pressure, 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 pressure. We do see examples of Vikings fighting with different weapons in each hand. But it's not common. Much more typical would be a weapon in one hand, shield in the other.
Absolutely.
And the shields were the primary defense of Vikings. Someone without a shield was thought to be defenseless. Viking duels were highly formalized forms of one-on-one combat with a strict set of laws and a strict set of methods for doing it. It was one-on-one combat where you could not move. The two fighters stood stationary during the fight, and it was trading blows. So first the challenged man did an attack on the challenger, then the challenger did an attack on the challenged man. And this continued until either somebody died or the first blood spilled on the ground below them. And duelers brought 3 shields with them to the dueling site.
They would break.
They knew it was likely that a shield would break. And so if a shield broke, they'd throw it away and pick up a fresh one during the duel.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. It hasn't been mentioned, but because we talked about the sax, we talked about the sword. Swords were expensive, so only the very successful Vikings would have been able to afford them. So that's swords. Then you have the axe, of course, but one very common weapon that was used by the Norse was the spear. And we never see it. Like in movies, video games, you never see it because you're like, no, the Vikings used the axe. But no, in reality, the spear was probably, in my opinion, it may have even been more common because we have mentions of Dane warriors, specifically like bodyguards that were using the Dane axe, the two-handed, sure. But axe and shield, it was a thing. But in battle, I think spear would have been more common in the hands of the Norse. That's what I think, at least.
So what we see in this clip is a shield being swung around wildly, like a knuckle duster.
Yeah.
We don't have evidence that Vikings did that very much. The shield was a defense, and any other use was probably sort of last ditch. So in the Viking Age, shields were round, made of wood, with an iron boss in the center.
Yeah, you know what I was telling you? They sometimes make them too thick. Look at this thing. Goodness gracious, it's a car tire. Holy moly, I've seen, what is it with movies? I've seen LARPers with shields that are 10 times better than this, whatever this is. So that's insane. The usage of the shield for the Vikings is not just, I'm sure he knows that, so I'm not even trying to say that that's what he meant. But I'm just saying it was used in a very dynamic way, which is what you get when you hold a shield like this rather than strapping it to your arm. There are pros and cons to both. Holding it actually allows you to extend it further, whereas when it's strapped to your arm, it's not up to a certain point, but then you'll have less reach. The shield was supposed to be used dynamically, which I'm sure he knows better than me.
And you grip the shield from behind the boss. There's a grip back there. There's no straps that the arm passes through, so the shield can rotate pretty freely.
Yep.
Now the shield in actual use was a defense. You held it tight to the body. And that is to allow you to deliver powerful blows with your sword. Now, it's possible to have the shield swinging around, but in order to deliver a blow with the shield way out here, you're wide open for a possible counterattack as you're delivering the strike. I would call both of those sort of standard.
Yeah, I'll just have to agree to disagree with him here. Honestly, I've seen people that are very skilled using Norse shields and axes and swords, and the shield is not kept tight close to the body at all times. I think he's wrong. I think he's intellectualizing it too much. And I don't question his knowledge. He's phenomenal. But sometimes even people that focus, sometimes we complicate things too much. We think too much. It happens to me as well. And then we end up disregarding ideas that instead probably a Norse person would be like, nah, not at all. I move it around. I do whatever I want with the shield. Smack someone in the face, counter with like that. That feels more realistic. And the way I've seen it used, the shield is dynamic. And the fact that, and again, I was telling you, I kind of want to use the shield. We're going to have a Vega with a shield. When I have the shield and I can grip it this way, holding it tight like this the whole time, I think defeats the purpose of this type of grip. Because look at what I can do due to the, look how far away I can hold it. This actually increases my line of defense. Because if I do this, look, even from the camera perspective, you can see my face, you can see a bit of my shoulders. Look at what happens when I put it further away. You can't see anything. This means my lines of defense are actually wider when I keep the shield. So that's how I would fight with a shield like this. Not that I'm a fighter, but I'm saying I would hold it kind of middle and to the side rather than like this. Would hold it like this with my sword, mace, axe, and then you can pivot. At least for what I've seen, and this is not me making stuff up. This is me for what I've learned from people that are more knowledgeable than me when it comes to this topic. Well, anyway, it's pretty cool. I don't want to watch the whole thing. Very cool. I liked him. I did like him. I disagreed a little bit, but that's it's good. It's not a problem.